Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So, remember when I promised turbulence? Well, we definitely got it this week. And yes, too much of it was triggered by the far too soon and tragic death of Prince, which we will be discussing today, but a fair amount of it was driven by the past few weeks of instability like I predicted. And with the new Beyonce release and Drake's new album on the way, y'all better buckle up because I don't see the Hot 100 quieting down for a good month or so, at least. And where the turbulence was most felt was in our top 10, and I don't even know where to start with this. The new number one, that would make it easy, but seriously, it seems wrong on some level that Panda by Desiigner got up to number one. Keep in mind, again, this is a song by a Future ripoff in every way, shape, and form that has charted higher than any other Future song that got famous because Kanye West gratuitously sampled it on a song that's currently dropping off the charts right now. Well, regardless of all of that, I have the feeling that Panda will not be sticking around for long. It might hold on to streaming and sales dominance, and it's gaining on airplay and YouTube, but it's facing some stiff competition. 7 Years by Lucas Graham is right behind it on sales and streaming, and while its YouTube has shrunk, it got so much airplay dominance that if Panda slips on sales or streaming, 7 Years will easily take the number one. And yet, we have our new top 10 entry with One Dance by Drake featuring Kyla and WizKid, which surged up to number 3 on big streaming gains, considerable airplay traction, and solid sales. This looks like Drake's newest attempt to snag the number one. If he drops the video at precisely the right time, he will probably end up getting it. Seamus with one of his worst ever songs. All this was enough to shove back work by Ariana and Drake off the number one to number 4, but that probably would have happened anyways, as I spent the week losing in every category, especially airplay and sales, and getting dethroned on streaming by Panda. This all led to Mike Posner's I Took a Pill and Ibiza to ride to number 5 on pretty much stability alone. Consistent gains across the board. I'm just kind of thrilled it's doing as well as it is. A little bit less thrilled that Work From Home by Fifth Harmony and Ty Dolla $ign went up with it to number 6. Mostly thanks to absolutely monstrous YouTube, strong streaming, and stronger sales. But airplay is lagging, so it'll be interesting to see if it can leapfrog its competition without the air radio. Now, part of this is also ties into the sudden weakness of No by Meghan Trainor sliding down to number 7. It might have picked up YouTube and has always had good sales, but airplay looks to have peaked this week, which is not a good sign for future viability. Almost the opposite case for Pillow Talk by Zayn, slipping on YouTube despite good streaming, spent the week picking up airplay traction despite weaker sales, and yet in the face of more stable competition, it slid down to number 8. Then we have Love Yourself by Justin Bieber sliding down to number 9. Now for me, the surprise is that it's not dropping faster, but it still manages to hold into the top spot in airplay, and it isn't descending that fast. Now that leaves us with Me, Myself, and I by G-Eazy featuring Bebe Rexha holding on to number 10. And yet, considering it peaked hard on airplay this week and is losing whatever streaming it's got left, it's here because of inertia and little else. In other words, the story of how long this has stuck around since the very beginning. But on the topic of songs less lucky than that, our losers and dropouts. And again, we had a bunch of them this week. Now, to be fair, most of the dropouts worth caring about, most of them you could have seen coming. Die Happy Man by Thomas Rhett, Nobody to Blame by Chris Stapleton. Both these were nearing the end of their run naturally. Along with, sadly, Sugar by Robin Schultz featuring Francesco Yates. And when you look at our losers, they're kind of all over the place. So let's start off with Kanye West's losses, as they're the easiest to predict. Famous dropped down to 62, Father Stretch My Hands Part 1 fell down to 64, and Part 2 slid down to 97. And just like last week, Country fared just as badly. In this case, with a lot of songs that seem cut prematurely short. Sure, even though I really like the song, I can understand country radio pulling off You Should Be Here by Cole Swindle down to 55. Kind of makes sense, it's had its run. But beyond that, That Don't Sound Like You by Lee Brice down to 81, Drunk on Your Love by Brett Eldridge down to 83, and Little Bit of You by Chase Bryant falling down to 88 feels a little bit premature, especially with no obvious replacements on the radio. Granted, when you look at the pop radio scene, it's almost just as rough. Of course, I would expect Hands to Myself by Selena Gomez to fall to 35, or Back to Sleep by Chris Brown to slip hard down to 57, but I'll admit being surprised how hard Summer 16 by Drake continues to fall off, especially as the lead-off single for Views from the Six. And then we get the cases of just evaporating momentum, with Taylor Swift's New Romantics losing all of its gains to collapse down to 78, and Ophelia by the Lumineers falling hard down to 89 after returning last week. Finally, we've got two songs that have never had a lot of consistency. Piece by Piece by Kelly Clarkson skidding down to 82, and Might Be by DJ Luke Nasty going down to 92. In the latter case, given how blatantly he sampled from Anderson .Paak's Much Better song, I'm entirely okay with it just being gone. But now, we need to talk about our gains and returning entries. And before we deal with the big purple elephant in the room, let's get through the gains pretty quickly. I've already mentioned One Dance by Drake rising up to number 3, but really the big winner this week was Rihanna, as Kiss It Better recovered up to 70, and Needed Me continued its rise up to 23. We also saw If It Ain't Love by Jason Derulo pick up a little bit of traction to 84, but as I said last week, I don't really see that lasting. But when we get to returning entries and immediately discard that pointless Keith Urban track Wasted Time back at 90, we have 6 songs recharting after the tragic loss of one of the greatest musicians of all time, Prince. And I gotta be completely honest, while I know and love a lot of Prince's music, David Bowie's death did hit a lot harder for me in terms of music that resonated on a more primal level. And yet, I can't deny that the artistic legacy that Prince left, shattering boundaries of genre, sexuality, and label cooperation, even after he left albums and songs that are untouchable to this day. So even though I know they're only gonna be here for a week or so at most, to see 6 Prince classics rechart with huge sales this week, that's a great thing. The wonderfully dated 1999 smashing through at 41, the razor-edged hard rock of Let's Go Crazy cracking down at 39, the soaring classic of Little Red Corvette coming through at 29, the incredibly tight funk of Kiss hitting 28, the sparse and surprisingly eclectic When Doves Cry at 20. You know that song doesn't even have a bass line and somehow doesn't even need it? And finally, the power ballad classic Purple Rain at 17. Funny story about that song. Prince actually reached out to the keyboardist of Journey, Jonathan Cain, about Purple Rain, as he was concerned that it was too similar to Faithfully in the composition. And while I do hear a little bit of it, Purple Rain has an edge in the vocals and the sizzling guitar that just makes it undeniable. We don't hear classics driven by virtuoso talents like this on the radio anymore, much less become massive hits. So to see so much of Prince's best songs return to the Hot 100, it's fantastic to see it back. If only for a moment. And at this point, do I really need to even talk about our new arrivals? It's not like anything here is going to be measuring up to Prince. But you know what? Let's give them their fair chance. Starting off with number 99, Let Me Love You by Ariana Grande featuring Lil Wayne. I can't be the only one who has noticed that the launch of Ariana Grande's third album has felt kinda shaky, can I? Focus, I mean, that sank like a stone. Be Alright vanished after a week. And while Dangerous Woman is holding on, it's probably the best of the songs, it's only barely cracking the top 10. And now with a new single featuring Lil Wayne debuting so low, well, it's kind of a reason, because the song's not very good. And there are problems across the board. The hollow pitch-shifted fragments against the melancholic synth and dreary bass before an oddly shrill trap beat comes in. This is tipping the balance towards creepy more than sexy, no matter how much Ariana is trying. And Lil Wayne is not helping here. Maybe it's because I've heard I Am Not a Human Being 2 one too many times, and by that I mean hearing it once. But listening to Lil Wayne dropping into Svengali mode with Ariana after her breakup when she's vulnerable, that just sets my nerves on edge. It's just not a good scene. Coupled with the stuttered hook, it reflects the sort of clumsiness that I've seen in way too many Ariana Grande songs recently, and it's pretty far from being, you know, remotely fun. So yeah, passing this. Number 95, You Don't Own Me by Grace featuring G-Eazy. So, fun fact, I've already talked about this song at length a few months back for World Hit. Mostly because while it was big in the UK, I wasn't sure it would ever cross over into the States, even with the non-presence of G-Eazy providing guest verses. But for those of you who missed that episode, Grace is an Australian singer, with this being the lead single for her breakout EP. But this is actually a remake of a 1963 song by Leslie Gore, who's most well known for It's My Party, which I actually can't stand. Now keep in mind, this was a feminist anthem in the 60s that nearly topped the charts, only being held off by the Beatles, which is boundary pushing in and of itself. But Grace's update does enough to make it more than just an update. For one, she actually got Quincy Jones, who produced the original, to work on the remake, which is why the production maintains its old school bombastic melody while still feeling modern, and that she grabbed G-Eazy, who plays opposite her. And for as much as I find G-Eazy supremely uninteresting, him reasserting the attraction to equality in this girl owning herself intensifies the song's edge. I really like it. So yeah, retro done right, and while I kind of doubt that it'll take off in the US the way it did in the UK, I'd like to see it happen if it does. Damn great song, check it out. Number 93, I Hate You, I Love You by Gnash featuring Olivia O'Brien.
But I can't put nobody else above you. I hate you, I love you. I hate that I want you. You want her, you need her, and I'll never be her.
So on the topic of male-female team-ups that also went to #1 in Australia, we have this song from up-and-coming hip-hop artist Gnash. And, well, here's the thing. I get this sort of deeply melancholic situation, where the couple were friends with benefits, where things kind of went south. Gnash's single verse seems to imply that he wanted something more serious than she did, and when that wasn't being reciprocated, she thought she was being used, or maybe they were just a lousy match in the first place. He moved on, and now she's frustrated with that. So, okay, I can appreciate the emotional context here, but there's very little to the execution. Instrumentally, we get a very dreary piano, hint of some bass beat, and a hand clap, and Gnash's bars are well structured, but he's biting from Drake's flow hard, especially in his vocal tone. Otherwise, there's just very little to this that I find all that interesting or powerful, especially considering the thick atmosphere of non-action and stasis that permeates this song. In other words, I don't really care for this. More often than not, probably would skip it. Number 73, Wicked by Future.
Hold up, way oh, way oh, way oh, way oh. Wiggy, way oh, way oh, way oh. Hold up, way oh, way oh, way oh. Stand up in the motor, bust the dashboard. Stand up in the motor, bust the dashboard. Hold up, wiggy, way oh, way oh, way oh. Way oh, way oh, way oh, way oh.
Okay, if I was Future right now, I'd be pretty annoyed at not just getting ripped off, but by that rip-off going to #1, really by doing nothing that Future hasn't already done. Maybe it's just a case of market saturation, because here we've got another track from Future wallowing in his worst impulses. And no, I'm not talking about Low Life or the majority of his recorded output for the past 2 years. Though at this point, can you really tell the lyrical differences between those songs, where Future spews out a list of brand names, takes shots at Sierra for effectively calling him out on his nonsense? Dude, get over it already. And he continues to emphasize his wickedness by comparing his gang to that of the Taliban, which, no, that's not cool in the slightest. I'd say the production is okay with the sparse, bombastic synth and the deeper bass beat to play off the trap beat, but there's just nothing I haven't heard dozens of times before from Future. It's not new, it's not interesting, and at this point, I'm gonna bring up my rule when it comes to nihilistic artwork like this. If you don't change it up eventually, you don't bring something new to the table, being a self-loathing asshole stops being compelling and starts getting tedious. Next. And finally, number 42, Just Like Fire by Pink. You know, it's actually been 3 years since a Pink song has actually charted on the radio, and that's kind of be expected. I'm not surprised by this. Her project with City and Color was low-key folk music that was not going to get any radio traction in 2014, and she's been pretty quiet for a while. And as a fan, I've missed Pink a lot. Throughout the 2000s, she was one of my favorite pop rock singers in the mainstream, with tons of personality in her voice, explosive lyrics, and normally some killer hooks behind her. So see her back on a soundtrack single that just gave me the same sinking feeling I had with Shakira and Try Everything, and sadly, this isn't much better. It's not a bad song per se, the acoustic foundation is solid and Pink still sounds great, even if it is considerably less raw than her best work, but the production succumbs to the percussion over melody template and the lyrics are really thin, even for a self-esteem anthem. Sure, I didn't mind the pseudo-rap breakdown on the third verse, but there's so little to this song that's worth remembering, and Pink, she's just a lot better than this. I almost didn't believe that she wrote it, but turns out she, Max Martin, and Shellbad just delivered a slice of soundtrack album filler that's just bland as hell. I'd say just to skip this, but you know what? You'd probably forget it. So that was this week, and if I had my way, Prince would just run away with everything here. But since that's not really fair to anything else, best of the week goes to the last world hit with You Don't Owe Me with Grace and G-Eazy, and worst of the week goes to Future with Wicked, because at this point, I'm just getting sick and tired of the formula. Next week, we're probably getting a lot of Beyonce, which, given how much I liked her last album, that's only a positive, so I'm looking forward to it. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.